up, guys, and welcome back to the Reagan Faulkner Show. For weeks, we've been looking at Zoran Mamdani, immigration, and some of the issues that are facing America culturally from the Great Migration into the United States. But today, we're going to look at a very specific example of how this is coming to a head and what it means for U.S. taxpayers. America is being invaded by foreign forces with foreign interests. To be quite frank, look at Minnesota, Michigan, and New York. Look at politicians like Ilhan Omar, Zoran Mamdani, Saikat Chakrabarti, and Omar Fattah. And he's a legislative representative in Minnesota. And they're all seeking to change the culture of the U.S. They're all seeking to change our policies, change our laws, and change what it means to be an American, to be completely honest. Minnesota has the largest group of Somalians taking refuge from their homeland. They have over 80,000 Somalians living in Minnesota compared to, I believe it was 14,000 in Washington State, maybe 24,000 in Ohio or something. So astronomically, they have about one half of the entire U.S. Somalian population. And then we've got Governor Tim Walz literally advocating to change the Minnesota flag into a flag that resembles that of Somalia. It's absolutely insane. We've got Ilhan Omar going into the U.S. House of Representatives and going on interviews saying that the white man is dangerous, the American white man is a danger, that the American white man commits most of U.S. crimes and most of U.S. violence. I mean, it is an attack on what it means to be an American and what American values and traditions and culture really is. And in the wake of all these clashes, in the wake of all of this happening, in the wake of Zoran Mamdani, in the wake of all of the Muslim individuals that were elected during the municipal elections a few weeks ago, there's one group that's really coming out as the head of all these debates and all these arguments and all these discussion points. And that is the Somalians in Minnesota. They have been privy to a scandal of just astronomical size. So the Somali community, they've had temporary protected status, or what I'll refer to as TPS, in the United States since September 16th, 1991, because of political unrest that's been going on in their country, political turmoil. I think there was some civil war going on. They've had a lot of unrest in Somalia. So in September 16, 1991, they got temporary protected status to come to the U.S. as refuge, and it has just been renewed every single 2 years since then. But they just got caught in a scam that cost the federal government hundreds of millions of dollars, with reports going as high as over $1 billion in state and federal funds that got completely conned from taxpayers. So the following information comes from the U.S. Attorney's Office, District of Minnesota, and it's basically just a full evaluation of what this group has done in Minnesota and how much money it costs U.S. taxpayers, and then we'll dive into the consequences of what it really means for Americans as a whole, as people are literally vying that we need to reopen our borders, and why we shouldn't, why quite frankly we shouldn't, why quite frankly we need to close off the United States, we need to be isolationist and nationalist until we can sort out our things at home, like I said in the last episode. But the Early Intensive Developmental and Behavioral Intervention Benefit is a program funded by the state of Minnesota to provide resources, help, therapies to individuals under the age of 21 with autism spectrum disorder. And Asha Hassan founded an organization, an LLC, called Smart Therapy LLC in 2019. And she enrolled it in this program that provides resources for young individuals, young adults with autism. And then after that, she went to parents within the Somali community in Minnesota and asked them to enroll their children in the Smart Therapy LLC. So these parents went and they had their children who did not have autism. They had them diagnosed with autism so that they could enroll them in Smart Therapy LLC, as Asha Hassan had asked them to do. And then Hassan would pay these parents what's called a kickback, basically a bribe, to buy their participation, their silence in her scheme. So Hassan pulled in other young adults, 17 to 19 were kind of the approximate ages, and then some of their relatives and family members to act as quote unquote providers. And what they were doing was saying that they were providing therapy and treatment to the individuals with autism when they weren't. They were not in any way, shape, or form. They were not qualified to do so. They weren't, and there's not another way to put that. They just were not. It was a complete lie. So the Minnesota Department of Human Services reimburses every single child within this program anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 per year. And in 2019, the state program dished out about $3 million. So this was before Asha Hassan had founded her group and before other Somalian individuals founded similar quote-unquote autism therapy, autism treatment groups to children under 21. Well, by 2023, this number had grown to $399 million that the Minnesota Department of Human Services was dishing out within this program. That is an insane jump. That is a $396 million jump in 4 years. And I don't think a single person watching or listening to this believes that the need for these resources went up that much, that the amount of Somalians under the age of 21 with autism went up that much. Now, to be clear, this program goes to everybody in Minnesota. It is not for Somalians specifically, but if you look at the data and you look at the information, it was Somali groups and Somali quote-unquote autism treatment centers that were breaking in the majority of this cash. It was a full scheme by this individual group of people. So out of this $399 million, Smart Therapy LLC received $14 million of these dollars for their alleged services. But many of the other, like I said, Somali organizations were engaging in this as well. It was a complete scheme that Hassan had helped put on and helped encourage other people to engage in. And many, if not all of these organizations, this is the crazy part, these organizations were sending this money that they were getting from the state of Minnesota because they were alleging to help autistic children. They were taking this money from lying and they were offshoring it to other countries. They were sending it to Dubai, they were sending it to Kenya, and they were sending it back to Somalia. And after they traced where this money was going, a really major chunk, it's still under investigation, so I'm not going to say the majority, but an incredible amount of this money was being sent to Al-Shabaab, which is the Somali division of Al-Qaeda, the terrorist organization. Yeah. So the Somalians in Minnesota created all these fake autism treatment centers, raked in $399 million in 2023, and then they offshored this money to pro-Muslim terrorist organizations that want to see Western culture fall, that want to destroy America, the organization that did 9/11. They sent this money to them, hundreds of millions of dollars. And this wasn't the only scam that they ran, y'all. This was not the only scam, all right? So they also stole federal money. This is state money. This is all funded by people who reside in Minnesota. So then they went federal with it. So again, Hassan, same woman doing this scam as well, and others that were tied to the autism scam, they were involved in the Feeding Our Future fraud of 2020. So they got busted for a 2020 scam. Now they're getting busted for a 2023 scam. So Amy Bach, the founder of Feeding Our Future, utilized what's called the Federal Child Nutrition Program. And I'm not sure the full extent of this program. I know they were providing money for those who were feeding hungry children during COVID. And she stole hundreds of millions of dollars from the federal government through this program. So Feeding Our Futures established 200 sites that they claimed were feeding young people, and they were saying that these organizations could range from a couple hundred kids to over 1,000 kids, and they were feeding them every single day, 7 days a week, which they weren't doing. So Hassan from before enrolled Smart Therapy LLC in the Federal Child Nutrition Program under the Feeding Our Future group that Amy Bach had created. And all in all, Hassan claimed $465,000. So Not quite the cash pool that she got from the last one, but still $465,000. I mean, that's about $500,000. It's still a pretty extravagant amount of money. And claimed that she had dished out over 200,000 meals, which her organization never did. From my reading, I don't believe that they provided a single meal, to be quite honest. And this was, again, only one of the organizations. I know another guy was running a convenience mart. He has been charged. I don't think he's been convicted yet, but he was running like a convenience store, and he was claiming he was feeding kids when he wasn't feeding kids at all. He bought a building in Minnesota. He bought a bunch of cars. He also offshored a ton of money to foreign entities and foreign groups. I mean, it's absolutely insane. So they're, all in all, the scam took about $300 million from federal taxes, and 56 people have pled guilty, and 77 have been charged. And if you go through some of the various articles, I know MSN has a really good one. There's a good Substack on it. But if you go through these articles, the Somalians that have been involved in this are saying, yeah, it's unfortunate that these are all people that live in my community. These are all Somalians, for the most part, that are perpetuating these crimes and these scams and these scandals. And there have been others too. There was a housing and rent stabilization fraud that occurred in Minnesota with the Somali population. And all of these scandals really culminated recently with Donald Trump coming in last week and saying that he was going to revoke the TPS of Somalis living in Minnesota. And we had some federal judges come out and say, no, you can't do that for only one state. You have to revoke them all at once. So if he's going to revoke the TPS status of Somalis in Minnesota, then he has to revoke the TPS status for all Somalis in the United States. Well, the kicker is their TPS is up for renewal in March of 2026. So if they do deem that this is illegal and Trump is unable to do this, they likely won't renew their status come 2026. And all of the Somalis that have not perpetuated these crimes and that are legitimately fleeing their country are going to be sent home because the ones in Minnesota have done such atrocious crimes against United States taxpayers. So it'll be really interesting to see what that legal fight looks like and what Trump ultimately decides to do, whether he revokes the TPS for all of them, or if he can get away with only doing it for the ones in Minnesota, or if he just decides not to renew their status. It'll be really interesting to see how that plays out. But really, Americans need to look at this. We need to look at all the people that crossed our borders in the Biden administration. We need to look at all these people that are running in politics, that are running on the left, that are running on socialist platforms. We need to look at Dearborn, Michigan, and the policies that they're implementing. And we need to wonder if these foreign migrants that are coming into our country, are they really coming for the American dream? Because yes, we all know the liberal, retort to this. Well, immigrants built our country. Yeah, they did. But now we have technology. Now we have globalization. Now we have ways for people to come into our country when they have varying loyalties, when they have varying intents, when they have varying interests, when they might be, working for other national groups, other terrorist groups. There's a lot at hand that wasn't at stake in the 1920s, the 1910s, the late 1800s when immigrants were flooding into the United States and building us up. Now, what we're seeing is a lot of immigrants that are tearing us down, that are seeking to destroy our culture and that are seeking to destroy our country with socialist agendas and with literal some of the largest welfare scandals in United States history. I mean, we really need to wonder who we're letting into our country. And these are some of the things that we need to tell our leftist counterparts. These are the things that are happening. This cost the United States government billions of dollars that could have gone to Americans with needs, that could have gone to help people, that could have been there during the government shutdown. But they were wasted being funneled into literal terrorist organizations that want to see the United States be destroyed. And the U.S. government has a duty to investigate all of this. They have a duty to investigate just every single group, every single person that comes into the U.S. I am a huge proponent of ICE. I am a huge proponent of immigration enforcement, and I think that it's incredibly important to make sure that these groups aren't coming in, stealing our taxpayer money, and sending it to foreign interests that they are still loyal to. And with the shutdown, the realization of all of the EBT fraud and the SNAP fraud, the U.S. has a duty to audit every single welfare program, to be quite frank, and look for abuse, fraud, and waste. I mean, to look for all of it, because where is this money going, and who are the people that are on it? Are they legal? Are they U.S. citizens? Is it going to people who are alive even? I know some of the EBT money was going to people who literally aren't alive. So this is really bringing to light some of the issues that the United States has in terms of our welfare programs and in terms of some of the ways that we've been handling immigration. But Americans have low trust in government right now, and it's these stories and the way that they've been covered up. I didn't hear about this until extremely recently. The way that they're being covered up by left-wing politicians, the way that they're being covered up by media outlets, the way that people are coming out and saying, oh, Trump is terrible for revoking their TPS. Well, is he though? They took billions of dollars from the U.S. government, from innocent taxpayers. I mean, is that such a bad thing? Because they're not telling you that part. And as Americans, we need to demand transparency from our representatives. We as individuals need to work to expose this corruption, expose this fraud, expose the sheer amount of waste and scandal and abuse within our welfare programs, because this is our money. And we fought for no taxation without representation. And if our taxation is going to entities that literally want to kill us, then we need to know about that and we need to have a say. Because if we don't, more foreign entities that hate Americans, that hate Christians, that hate Western culture will keep profiting from your taxpayer money in order to prepare to destroy the country that you hold dear and that you love. Thank y'all so much for joining me today. I can't wait to see y'all. We're going to start doing this show 2 to 4 times a week, so that's going to be really exciting. But if you want more content, remember to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and X. That's going to be at the Wilmington Standard and at the Reagan Faulkner Show. And be sure to look us up at thewilmingtonstandard.com and reaganfaulkner.com. Thank y'all so much. Can't wait to see you on the next one.